On the outcome of Super Tuesday, we are joined by Tom Switzer from the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Of course, as mentioned before, my guest host today, Charles Leyland. Tom, I might start with you. Look, thanks very much for your time. Just hearing, obviously, a little while ago that Mitt Romney has won Ohio. How important for him was it to win, in particular, that primary, that state?
It's very analogous to Iowa. Both Santorum and Romney basically finished in a dead heat in Iowa on January 3. This is more or less a dead heat. But the fact of the matter is that when the networks give you the big tick, symbolically that gives you a lot of momentum. The other point to bear in mind is that even if Romney had lost Ohio, he still would have had far more delegates than Rick Santorum. In fact, Rick Santorum, believe it or not, was ineligible for about 18 of the 66 delegates in Iowa. And that gets back to the point, Ohio I should say, that gets back to the point that money and organisation really do count in these primaries, and Mitt Romney has it in spades.
So is it a bigger blow to Santorum than, I suppose, the advantage of a win for Romney? Because Santorum has sort of tried to position himself as that blue-collar sort of representative in this race, and Ohio is very much a blue-collar sort of a ticket.
Look, Santorum should be happy with his result today. He's won 3 states pretty convincingly, and he came very close in Ohio. And Santorum has what Romney lacks, and that is an ability to reach out to blue-collar, working-class, Reagan Democrats, if you like, which is, in Australian parlance, Howard battlers. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think Santorum really will have a significant chance of winning the nomination later this year in Tampa. I think Romney, by all accounts, will be the nominee. But unfortunately for Romney, what these results all across the nation show is that the broad cross-section of the conservative base of the Republican Party still harbour deep doubts about his abilities to represent their causes against President Obama.
That's the problem, isn't it, I suppose, for Romney, as you say, whereas in a presidential election, he's more in an advantageous position because he can potentially get those more sort of right-wing Republican voters, but at the same time has more of an ability than Santorum to pivot and get the central sort of vote.
The key to winning the nomination is to always wrap up your base so that you can win the nomination before moving to the centre and the middle ground in a general election. Romney is, I believe, well placed to fight Obama in the centre of the political landscape in the United States, but he'll keep struggling in this race. Now, on election day, of course, he may well appeal to a lot of independents and centrists that move and shape elections, particularly in those battleground states like Ohio, Pennsylvania and Florida. But he also needs to get out his own base to turn up on election day, because remember, in the United States, voting is voluntary. So if he can't win over the conservative base in the primaries, he will struggle to encourage them to vote on election day, which is so important in a country where voting is not compulsory.
I just wonder, has the, I suppose, importance of the Conservative vote in this GOP race been diluted to some extent by it almost being split between Santorum and Gingrich?
Look, you're absolutely right, and this has worked in Mitt Romney's favour. You've had a splintered field, and so that means the anybody but Romney vote is split, and that actually helps Mitt Romney, so he's coming down in the middle. The other advantage that he has over his rivals is, as I said before, money and organisation and prominent endorsements, which can't be dismissed. He's received a lot of prominent endorsements in recent weeks and months from none other than the first President Bush, President Bush 41, prominent magazines such as National Review, and of course a lot of endorsements from prominent conservative Republicans, legislators and governors across the nation. So he's in prime position to win the nomination, but again, he can't shake off these doubts, and they will haunt him until the convention day in Tampa in late August, early September.
Tom, it's Charles Leyland here. Just a question: who out of the 3 is best placed to take on Obama in the presidential elections? And the American way that they do the current elections is surprising. You know, these people who are supposedly on the same team seem to be quite aggressively fighting each other. But then I'd imagine you know, it's quite normal for Democrats and Republicans. And then after it's all over, I'm sure they all shake hands and make up and push towards the same goal.
Well, on your second point, bear in mind, although the Republicans have been eating each other up for several months now, they are playing child's play compared with the Australian Labor Party a few weeks ago. I mean, no one's calling Mitt Romney a psychopath or a complete and utter fraud, as many of Kevin Rudd's colleagues did. No, that was quite extraordinary. So the Republican Party is not there. But you're quite right. In the primary process for both Democrats and Republicans in the presidential race, there are often Donnybrooks. We saw this most notably in early 1992 when a little-known governor from Arkansas was subjected to all sorts of criticism from many of his own Liberal and Democratic colleagues, and he went on to win not just the nomination, but he beat President George H.W. Bush in what many people thought would be an automatic re-election for Bush. So the circumstances can change. But on the other point, all the available evidence indicates that Mitt Romney is more likely to win over those crucial independent voters that move and shape elections. The problem that Santorum and Gingrich have is that they are seen as too conservative. And although the United States is very much a centre-right nation, those guys are probably emphasising too much of the social conservative issue, particularly, and that's dangerous, particularly at a time when a lot of middle America is overwhelmingly focused on the economy, high levels of debt, the swelling mortgage prices, and I think that that's why Romney's in a better position to win over the independents than the others against President Obama.
And look, Tom, just finally, are you surprised that there is still 4 candidates in this GOP race, and do you see it almost being a marathon for Romney if he does indeed win, that he's just going to have to outspend and outstay the other candidates?
This race is far from over. I think Mitt Romney will win the nomination, but because of these so-called super PACs, these are organisations that aren't directly committed to candidates, they can keep spending money, negative ads, robocalls. This will continue for a couple of months, I suspect. And Romney will have a few more setbacks. Next week we go down south to Mississippi and Alabama. I think that Gingrich will have a very good chance of winning over those states. So this will go on for a couple more months. Bear in mind, in 2008, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton kept fighting it out way until May and early June. So this is in keeping with that. The difference, of course, is that Obama and Clinton, when all is said and done, were basically on the same team. These guys are really ripping into each other. Not as bad as the Australian Labor Party in the last few weeks, but there's still there'll be a lot of battering and bruising taking place in the next few months.
All right, Tom Switzer, got to leave it there. As always, great to get your analysis and hopefully speak to you throughout what is turning into a marathon race.